Well, today's going to be an incredible conversation with an incredible person. We're talking about sacrifice, the discipline of sacrifice, which is the only way from a Jesus perspective to live a full life. And that is not one built around ourselves, not one built around consumption, but a life where we give up our life for the sake of others. And Jesus said it's by giving our life away that we actually find life that is really life. And so we have a great opportunity to talk about that at an incredible place. This is Café Momentum. And so tell us about, they look amazing, but tell us about these wings.
Well, there's a little bit of a backstory to those wings. This restaurant opened on January 29th, 2015. And with a menu focused on farm to table kind of what's seasonal, what's within the season. So the idea is to change the menu as often as the seasons are changing and different things are coming in from different farms. However, one dish has never changed on the menu because that dish has outsold every dish every week for almost 8 years now, 2-to-1, 3-to-1. Oh, wow. Week after week after week, and that is our smoked fried chicken.
Okay, it sounds, I'm sold already.
So we kind of laugh about it because of all the fancy foods we do,
Yeah, you're very high-end, fine dining kind of stuff that you do, right?
Yeah, so all the fancy stuff that we make, what we're known for is our fried chicken. Even as we look at expanding into other cities across the country, one of the first questions people from a different market will say is, well, are you going to make your fried chicken here?
Yeah.
So we're known for it, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to reinterpret our smoked fried chicken in the form of wings.
Yeah, thanks for doing that, because it's sitting on your normal menu, so you're doing this just for us, and I appreciate it.
So these wings are brined overnight in a sweet tea brine.
Okay.
That we make, and then we rinse the brine off and put them in our smoker, and we cold smoke them with the idea that we're smoking them at a very low temperature so that the wings are absorbing the smoke, but they're not cooking. Then that's done for about an hour, and then we'll let them rest overnight, and then fried them fresh this morning.
Oh, man.
We also make our own special flour mixture. Got a little bit of a spice kick to it to kind of ramp it up too and complement the smoke. This is a thicker breading than your traditional wing, but that is our crust that we make for the smoked fried.
And is the sauce, would you say, on a 1 to 10 hot scale? What am I getting ready to?
I mean, it depends on your palate. I think for a native Texan, I would put it at about a 6 or 7.
Okay.
If you're maybe from a little bit further up north, it might be about an 8 or 9.
Yeah. All right, so let's jump into these bad boys.
You had me at hello.
Okay, I'm gonna try it without the sauce first.
That's fair. Now, when it comes to wings, since you're a wings guy, are you more of the drumstick or more of the?
I love everybody on that. Yeah, this is amazing. I can see why people would not want you to take this off. This is worth it to come just for this. Okay. So I'm gonna try a little sauce here. So let's talk a little bit about your story. How did it start? What were you doing? How did it happen?
Yeah.
And I'll eat.
That's a fair trade-off if you have to listen to me. I just a little bit further back, went to culinary school with one goal, and that was to own a restaurant and be chef at the restaurant. In 2007, sold my house, took all the equity out of it, took out a loan, and bought in as co-owner of a restaurant in the uptown area here in Dallas. That was kind of it for me. I thought, wow,
you've made it, right?
I did it. Yeah. I did everything. Yeah. That was my goal, and I did it. Of course, thinking of more goals, which was, okay, what's the next restaurant? What's the next restaurant? It also just happened to be the beginning of a global recession. And as I was celebrating being co-owner of a restaurant, was watching restaurants close all around us, left and right, and kind of thought, maybe this is going to be a short-term celebration. But in spite of that, in the first year being a co-owner, I helped to grow the business by almost 40%, and was nominated as best up-and-coming chef in Dallas. It was right around the 1-year mark of ownership that I was volunteered to go out to a Dallas County juvenile detention facility and teach 8 young men to make ice cream for an ice cream competition at the Dallas Farmers Market that was primarily consisted of college culinary students competing against one another. I mean, these were young people that were in culinary school, had a huge passion for cooking, were being trained and taught in the proper skills of cooking. And yet here I was in front of 8 young men who were in detention, who for many of them had never tasted a fresh pineapple or mango. What was, I think, more immediately aware to me was a great sense of shame, because the moment I met those 8 young men, I realized I had stereotyped them before I'd ever met them, and I was wrong. I thought I was a better person, but when confronted with the reality face to face, I was wrong. That shame led to a humility that led me to spend the next 3.5 hours listening. And while these 8 young men were making ice cream, they were also telling me who they were, how they were, why they were. And 2 days later, the county bussed them down to the farmers market. They're competing against college culinary students. And one of them won the whole competition.
Oh, wow.
And when he won, he was so excited. He said to me, which I think when you talk about a servant heart, he said to me, I just love to make food and give it to people and put a smile on their face. Oh, wow. Which is a pretty incredible way to describe your heart. He said when he got released, he was going to get a job in a restaurant, asked my professional opinion on whether he should work at Wendy's or Chili's. And then he went back to detention, and I went home. And my trip home went from excitement, enthusiasm to anger, frustration, sadness, because I realized he was never going to make it to a Wendy's or Chili's. Just understanding his story and
he's in that cycle that's never going to
what led him to detention in the first place. None of that was changing, going back to the same circumstance situation. But I started thinking about myself at 16. And I very quickly realized the differences in my life at 16 years old and his, and the core of difference was that our lives were dictated by choices that were made for us before we were born. Whether it be because of the color of our skin, the socioeconomic class we were born in, the part of town that we were born in, the school, education, resource that we had access to or inaccess to. None of those things are mutually exclusive. And it was this realization in that moment that perhaps the world doesn't actually work the way that I have thought to that phase of my life that it worked. So with that kind of understanding, it was like, well, you have 2 choices. You can just play ignorant and just go about your life, or you can lean in and try to be a part of a different world. And that was it for me. I was all in. And so that was where the idea for this place came about was, well, I know how to cook, I know how to run a restaurant, so how do I apply that to something different for these young people? You're sitting in an award-winning restaurant that for almost 8 years has been consistently ranked as one of the top restaurants in Dallas. It just so happens that it's entirely staffed by 15 to 19-year-old justice-involved youth. That
is so cool. Now, when you made that decision, I mean, it sounds easy looking back. Oh, you did that. That's great, but that couldn't have been an easy decision. So what was that? What did that process look like? I'm sure people thought you were crazy. You probably thought you were crazy. I don't know about your family. Like, how did that go?
Well, anyone that knows me knows that I'm crazy to begin with.
Okay, well, that helps.
So that was a non-starter. But, anyone that knows me also knows that there was no other choice. I get a lot of, approached by a lot of people often that talk about sacrifice and that you went all in, you sacrificed. And it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that. Like, I get it on the surface, right? Co-owner of a restaurant, could own a lot more restaurants, could do all of these things, but it's just not who I am. Like, I don't, it sounds really simplistic to say, and maybe it is, but I don't, the sacrifice would have been had I not done this, in my mind.
So you started it, and I'm sure you've already said it. Your life is an illustration of when we give our lives away, we gain a lot more than we give up, and that the fullest life possible is a life of doing that. And of course, I know these kids sacrifice too, right? And they're giving things to you, to this community, to this restaurant. I'm sure you see that all the time too. So talk a little bit just about the calculus of, let's say, a normal person who's probably not going to quit their job and start a cafe, but they do want to live a life that is more difference making. They do want to, as they become more and more aware of what's broken in the world, to not just act like it's not there, but to say, no, I really do want to do something. But what would you say to somebody that would say, how can you just get started living a more engaged, socially significant, difference-making kind of a life with perhaps some sacrifice attached to it for the sake of others?
I'm going to kind of use a restaurant as an example because it happens in the restaurant every night. 100, 120 people will come in this restaurant on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night when we're open, and they'll have dinner. And just by being here and enjoying a wonderful meal, you're also affecting change in your own community and within yourself. We talk a lot here about how the young people that come to our program is a population of young people that by and large don't ever leave their neighborhood. So when they come here in the heart of the city, in downtown, and they're engaging with people from all over the Metroplex, they're beginning to see themselves as a citizen or a member of a much larger community,
right?
A much larger network. Yeah, so like just the basic idea that you're here. I would also easily argue and win that by being here and engaging with them, you're also making them feel seen and heard. You're making them feel that their lives matter. And we're dealing with a population, the juvenile justice industry uses a term to describe the young people that enter their system, and that's throwaway. And for our young people, it's a scarlet letter they wear on their chest that society's placed on their chest that they haven't put on there.
Yeah.
And so to come here and feel part of a much larger community is a very empowering feeling. And I think it's something that foundationally helps them as they're focused on achieving their full potential in life. So as simplistic as it is, thinking about just the concept of being here and engaging with a member of the community that perhaps you wouldn't have engaged with previously,
right, and
doing so in a way in which you kind of break down some of your stereotypes or barriers. I'm not the only person that has negatively stereotyped our young people when I went to that facility the first time. Sure. And in fact, in ramping up to launching this restaurant and program, I was met with all sorts of stereotypes. I was told, I was asked what I was going to do when the kids stab each other in the kitchen. I was told those kids don't want to work, they just want to collect a check. I was told those kids have never been to a nice restaurant, they can't cook your food. Wow. And so I think there's a very natural conversation that someone begins to have with themselves here. I hope they do. As simplistic as it sounds, it's so true in this restaurant's living testament that proximity matters. Mm-hmm. You can judge when you remove yourself from the problem. You can judge when you remove yourself from the situation. You can judge when you remove yourself from the individual. But when you share time with them, you're forced to see them for who they are, understand the situation for what it is. And I think that that's a very small sacrifice to make, is to say, I see this, it seems different to me or wrong to me or unfamiliar to me. I'm going to lean into it rather than just judge it.
Well, one last thing I think is really important in your story is that you chose to take an awareness step. You said you were volunteered, but still you showed up and you chose to make yourself aware of an issue that you would have never known. Like if you would never become aware, there would be no Café Momentum. Awareness is disruptive. if we have compassion, right? Once we become aware of an issue, you can't just act like it's not an issue. And you did. So it does feel like one step also is just for people to say, just become aware of what was really happening in different segments of our world and different segments of our own backyard in our own community. Because I wonder what your life would be like if you never become aware of this, you know?
Yeah, I think an awareness also removes judgment, right? And I think that we, myself certainly included, it's easy to cast judgment when we actually don't know, we're not aware, we don't understand the circumstance and the situation. And I think about people have a simplistic way of looking at employment and unemployment. And have this idea of like, well, if you need money, you get a job. And sometimes it's just not that simple. And as an example, we live in the city of Dallas. 50% of our population lives north of downtown, and 45% of our population, or 55% lives north of downtown, 45% lives south of downtown. So we're almost split equal. Yeah. But 95% of the jobs in the city are north of downtown. So it's never just as simple as saying, well, walking again. We live in a city where I think there's 3 grocery stores south of downtown Dallas. 45% of the population has 3 grocery stores dispersed. So I think that awareness should open to more curiosity, to understand more why is that, and then how can I advocate or support change.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I know that, like we've said, you certainly are living what Jesus said. That life, a consumption-driven life gets you nowhere, but a life lived for others gets you somewhere that is the kind of life that we are actually created to live. And that's not just you; that's anybody, right? And so, let me encourage you to show up, to come to Café Momentum on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday night. You also do catered events, I know. Get on their website, look at their story. It really is amazing. And then also make your own story and be open, become aware, and take your own steps that Jesus will call you to take, small or big, anything in between. These and come and get fried chicken when you come, because this is really, really good. Certainly the best wings in our little series. So thank you so much for your hospitality and for being part of this today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing our story.